She cheated, so I slept with all of her friends. My girlfriend cheated, and I never let her forget it. To this day, a good revenge story. It gives me this warm, bubbly feeling inside. I think it comes from a college experience years ago when I got revenge on my cheating girlfriend, and it felt good. I know I'm not supposed to enjoy it, but I can't deny how satisfying it was. It's probably one of my favorite feelings in the world, even though I'm ashamed to admit it. So I decided to write my first post about this, because I don't tell the story often. It's so long, and honestly, it just makes me look bad. I'm going to try my best not to paint a picture where my ex looks as terrible as possible, and me as innocent as possible. I want to write this as accurately as I can, even if it makes me look bad. A bit of context and backstory. At the time of this story, I played Division I NCAA basketball at a school, so I traveled a lot every week to different cities and states, and my whole life revolved around this. During the events of this story, I was in the early stages of a terrible substance and alcohol habit. Years later, I ended up getting sober and joined a program whose name you can find at the front of almost any phone book. I'm sure many people reading this are sober too and will understand how we, addicts and alcoholics, can be. This story is an effort to explain a character flaw that came from the events in this story that led me down a very dark path. However, I don't mean this story to come off as self-pity. Lastly, I was always a good kid. I was never troubled. My upbringing was very difficult, but I was able to keep an overall kindness in my spirit toward other people and almost always did the right thing or took the high road when it came to dating. I knew people cheated in relationships, but at the time of this story, I always chalked it up to other people not doing things the way I did. I never really thought it would happen to me. I always thought that because I was a 5-star boyfriend and made amazing choices in women, infidelity would never be part of my dating experience. I was naive. I really thought highly of myself and also had a real arrogance. Like any guy in his early 20s, I guess. The build-up. I was in my junior year at university. I had been single for about a year after my high school girlfriend and I finally broke up after 3 years. I checked that relationship off as a learning experience, and I now knew what to look for in my next girlfriend, the next woman I chose to be with, who I would most likely marry and start my future with. I know, I was young and dumb and thought I knew everything. LOL. I had my eye on this girl at my school. We'll call her Lisa. I saw Lisa around the collegiate athletic facility, the university team's training grounds and locker rooms. Lisa ran for the track team, and she was damn good. The various athletic teams often had parties, and I knew that at the first one I saw her, I would introduce myself, try to chat her up a bit, and see where it led. Soon enough, I saw Lisa at one of these parties, and we passed each other on the stairs. We made eye contact, and she smiled at me. I sparked a conversation with her, and after some back and forth, we exchanged numbers. We began the classic American style of flirting, constantly hinting things back and forth indirectly. We slowly progressed the relationship in this way for weeks, sending texts back and forth, hinting that we were interested in each other but also playing it cool so neither of us would reveal our crush. At the time, she was on a break with her current boyfriend, who was a popular player on the football team. She ended up leaving him completely to date me. This should have been a red flag, obviously, but remember, I had severe hubris at the time. Her leaving him for me just gave me a superiority complex. I was playing well in sports, and if she was willing to leave that guy for me, then she would never leave me for another guy. Lamau. I was a fool. I can't express how much I was into Lisa. I was addictively drawn to her, and had that weird feeling of, I can't believe my crush actually likes me too. I was so drowned and blinded by my crush on her, that I missed so many red flags. But our relationship began progressing really fast because of this. I didn't really do a proper inventory of why I liked her so much. Fast forward, about 8 months later, we are officially together. Lisa has her own athletes. I lived in a dorm room, but I was a couple of years older than her, and worked full-time during the summers and part-time during the school year. I also had my own apartment near campus, and Lisa was basically living with me. She would even stay there when I was out of town, which was about 3 or 4 days every week because we were in season and the team was flying all over the country. Despite that, Lisa and I were deeply in love. At the end of the season, I planned 2 massive back-to-back parties, one for my teammate's birthday on Friday night, and then my birthday on Saturday night. They just happened to fall on consecutive days, Friday and Saturday nights. Lisa and I got drunk Friday night and had some unprotected sex. Lisa kept a period tracking app on her phone. While she was asleep, I drunkenly remembered that she always marked on her calendar when we had unprotected intimacy, so she'd know if she should be worried if she missed her period. She missed her period often because she was an athlete. My foggy brain thought she should put it in her calendar now, since we'd probably forget the next day, given how messed up we were, so I woke her up and said, "Can you put in the calendar that we had unprotected sex?" It was like 5 a.m., and we were that kind of drunk where you're mostly just tired. She unlocked her phone and opened the app, but before she could enter anything, she fell back asleep. I took the phone while it was still unlocked and tried to figure out how to add it to her calendar myself. Side note, throughout our entire relationship, Lisa went through my computer and phone constantly. She was very insecure and always suspicious. I didn't care that she did this all the time. She never found anything because I never did shady stuff again. Looking back, it's an obvious red flag I missed. Remember, I thought this girl would never cheat on me. So this wasn't one of those stories where I went through her phone looking for something and found it. In this case, I was innocently trying to navigate the damn period calendar while drunk and was not suspicious at all. When I looked at the period calendar app on Lisa's phone, I saw all kinds of little markers on different days of each month. Each marker was a different color. I opened one to see what the color coding meant. Red obviously symbolized her period, and then there were black markers that showed when she had unprotected sex. That's when my heart sank into my stomach. This freaking calendar was covered with black markers. It looked like a checkerboard with only a handful of red pieces left, and all the black ones. There were black markers on dates when I was in a different city playing basketball. I proceeded to open all the black markers going back through our entire relationship. We did not have unprotected intimacy very often, maybe once or twice a month. She had written the names of the guys she had unprotected sex with in the notes section of the black markers. There were a total of 4 guys throughout our entire relationship that she allowed to penetrate her raw. Some months had almost a dozen of those black markers, sometimes even 2 in one day. Looking back, I wonder if there were more unlisted men I didn't see. Because she clearly only kept track of the guys she had unprotected sex with. In almost every story I hear of infidelity, the discovery involves finding text messages, being told by a friend, or the classic coming home early and catching your partner red-handed. I, on the other hand, discovered a damn well-documented ledger of almost every time she cheated and had unprotected sex. Among the 4 guys, I discovered one was her ex, the one she originally left to date me. Cheating on me with him was a common occurrence. There was some other unknown guy she was clearly sleeping with regularly. The last 2 guys looked to be one-time things, but again, like I said, these markers were just the times she had intimacy without a condom. So who knows what the real story was? I sobered up real quick. I went through Lisa's texts and calls and found nothing. However, at that time, Android phones had a folder where you could see deleted texts but not the content of the messages. She had thousands of deleted texts and calls, but I couldn't see what they said. I saw the numbers and did quick Facebook searches, matching one with her ex and about half a dozen other random guys. The worst part was, I found 2 of my teammates, one guy I was actually pretty close with. I just put the phone down after a few minutes. The evidence was overwhelming. The more I looked at the phone, the more my insides started to ache. I felt utterly defeated. I can't fully describe the feeling, but I'm sure anyone who's caught a significant other cheating knows exactly what I mean. I felt so stupid for trusting her and having no doubts. I couldn't stop thinking about how I regretted every time I had a chance to cheat but stayed faithful to Lisa. I felt like a fool for not cheating on her when I could have. My loyalty felt wasted. I know it sounds ridiculous and irrelevant, considering she was the one who was unfaithful. I think I obsessed over that, because if I had cheated too, maybe I wouldn't have hurt so much at that moment. All I could think about was how deeply I was hurting. I would have done anything to stop the pain and embarrassment. Question: am I the only one who thought this way after catching their partner cheating? I'm genuinely curious. I left my apartment and went for a long walk. I'd never felt emotions like these before and didn't know how to handle them. My ego felt like it was being torn apart right in front of me. I wasn't sure what to do because I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. My sadness quickly turned into anger. I knew I wanted revenge, I just didn't know how yet. I was boiling with rage and wanted to make sure she never recovered from this. My roommate, teammate, and best friend who was sleeping on the couch in my living room, we'll call him Bono, was an Eastern European kid who stood 7 feet tall and was as Russian in demeanor as you could imagine. He also had an equally ridiculous real name, hence Bono. Well, Bono called me shortly after I started my walk. I answered, and he asked where I was. I told him to keep this between us and explained what had happened. He stayed on the phone, went into my room, and I heard him shout in his Russian accent, "Yo, expletive, you cheated on him." Then I faintly heard her respond in the background, and Bono yelling at her to get out of the apartment. After some scuffling, Bono came back on the line and said, "Yo, she's gone. Come back, let's talk." I headed back home, and Bono and I went over what had happened. Things didn't get sappy, because we were both alpha males from cultures where men don't cry, and neither of us really knew what to say or do. He tried to comfort me and said, "Tonight's your birthday, we're gonna get expletive up and find you some expletive to expletive her." I never liked her anyway. Yeah, this was my birthday. Forgot to mention that part. Bono and I went out for breakfast. I was still a little drunk, and my phone was blowing up with calls and texts from Lisa. I told her I saw everything on her phone and couldn't stand to speak with her, or even look at her. She kept trying to convince me to let her come to my birthday party, and I made it clear I didn't want her there. She was clearly worried about exactly what Bono had suggested earlier. When we talked, Lisa's entire reputation and popularity revolved around dating me. I think most people didn't really like her, but tolerated her because we were together. She knew that if I acted single at my birthday party and she didn't show up, everyone would know something was wrong. I think Lisa cared more about avoiding embarrassment than about our relationship. I don't remember much of what happened that night, but one of my friends sent me a little birthday package from California, filled with some really good weed. Hash, moon rocks, some pills, and the devil's dandruff. I proceeded to do a glorious swan dive into intoxicated oblivion. All I remember is sitting on my chair at the pre-game for my party. There were 2 girls sitting on the arms of the chair, and I still have a photo of that moment. I remember it vividly. We were getting ready to head out. I had a few tables reserved downtown at a popular nightclub. The booze and substances were the only things that made me feel normal. I had my sunglasses on, and clearly had that happy, loaded grin on my face. The longer you look at the photo of me in that chair, the more you can tell I'm hiding a huge amount of hurt sitting there. The cocktail of substances started to hit me. This was the first time I ever used drugs, not to party, but to feel better, to make me feel normal. I remember thinking, I wanted to feel that way for the rest of my life, never to hurt like that again. With drugs, I thought I had control, and no one could hurt me anymore. Oh, how ironic that turned out to be. Years down the line, I told my teammates and friends that Lisa and I were done. When they asked why she wasn't at the party, I didn't tell them the reason. I also didn't show any sign that I was affected by it, I just played it cool. I tried to focus everyone on the party, ahead of the revenge, so this is one of those revenge stories that was only half planned. I knew I wanted to get back at Lisa for hurting me so much, but I mostly improvised as opportunities came along. My original kind spirit had died that night on my birthday, sitting in that chair. All my morals went out the window. I had never cheated in relationships, so I believed I would never get cheated on. I realize now how dumb that was, but that's what I thought back then. I didn't care about any collateral damage I caused, as long as my mission to hurt Lisa as much as possible was accomplished. So I lived every day with this new selfish mindset. One day, I was sitting at my computer, scrolling through Facebook, when I saw the profile of one of Lisa's track teammates on my feed. That's when my first vengeful idea hit me. I decided I was going to try to get her teammates to bite the bait I was about to cast out into the water. Though I didn't have proof she hooked up with my teammates, she was clearly trying to hide conversations between them. So I wanted to see how many people close to her I could passionately hug. Luckily, I had more options than she did when cheating on me. A women's track team is much larger than a men's basketball team, and also way better looking. Lisa's teammate I originally spotted on Facebook had a boyfriend, but I thought, everyone cheats. Let's see if it's true. I proceeded to do the little flirty social media dance with her, liking a few of her photos. She likes a few of mine back. I shoot her a message, and bam, she's at my house, in my bed, about a week later. Did something similar with other teammates on her 4x4 relay team. Coincidentally, 2 of the 3 girls I passionately hugged had boyfriends and subsequently cheated on them with me, which gave me mixed emotions. It stroked my broken ego, but also made me bitter and sad, giving me that women ain't loyal attitude. This is such a typical story of while fighting monsters, becoming a monster. This actually became my go-to strategy, because it accomplished 2 things in my messed up mind. It exposed a cheater. But more importantly, if they were willing to cheat on their boyfriends, they would be more secretive about it. That meant the drama that would follow when it came out would be even worse. And secondly, it made me feel better about Lisa cheating because it proved the problem wasn't MIT, was women. I know that's messed up, but that's what I thought. Back then, I started collecting something from every girl I hooked up with: a bra, a pair of panties, some jewelry, etc. Not for some creepy reason, but this became important later and was part of my plan. Sometimes I didn't even have to try. One girl left a pair of very distinctive shoes. I knew Lisa would recognize whose shoes they were. They belonged to the girl Lisa's ex-boyfriend rebounded with after they broke up, which upset Lisa because it was her friend. Now, it would upset her even more because that same girl had slept with both of her ex-boyfriends. I especially tried to collect items I knew Lisa could recognize, like a sweater from the women's track team with her teammates' name on it. After some time, I had collected a boatload of stuff. After a couple of months, one of Lisa's teammates' boyfriends found out about me and his girlfriend, and it kicked off a big, dramatic explosion of events among her and her teammates. This led to all of them discovering each other's promiscuity. The drama was massive. The coaches had to get involved. It got so bad, this made me feel so powerful in such an evil yet satisfying way. I fell in love with the destruction I was causing. The best part, that same week, the athletics PR team put up massive posters of me all over campus promoting the next game. They were everywhere. Some posters took up entire sides of buildings, so Lisa and her friends had to see me plastered all over campus every day while this drama exploded around them. I felt like a triumphant dictator. It was glorious and pathetic at the same time. Their coach even arranged a serious meeting with the compliance department and my team's coaches. My coaches literally laughed at her, saying this seemed like an internal issue, but that I hadn't done anything illegal or broken any school policy. So there was nothing they could do. This infuriated the women's track coach. Their team had fallen apart, and their national ranking began to plummet. Then Lisa's coach even got in trouble for being caught tearing down some of the smaller posters of me around campus in a rage-filled tantrum. I loved every bit of it. I kept adding fuel to the fire. Posting photos of me with girls, smiling and looking happy, every chance I got on Facebook and Instagram. But underneath it all, I was bitter. I was so deep into this new mindset that I had already forgotten the kind-hearted, naive kid I used to be. I hated my old self for letting some girl emasculate me. I was drowning in self-pity. Looking back, it's depressing. No one really knew though, because I kept up the cool guy act in front of people. There was even a girl on campus, on one of the sports teams, who claimed she was pregnant with my kid after I pretended to like her the same way I did with all the other girls on Lisa's team. As soon as we passionately hugged, I moved on. It's a long story, but it turned out she wasn't pregnant. Still, the gossip and press that came from that only dug the knife deeper into Lisa's side. I left behind a trail of women deceived and relationships destroyed. I feel bad now, but at the time, I didn't care because in my eyes, they were equally at fault since they were cheating on their boyfriends or sleeping with their friends' exes. Soon, girls became wary of me, and I was running out of potential. Targets. I was an awful human being than the way I thought and who I was. I started going after girls who weren't even friends or on Lisa's track team but were just around her in daily life, like her classmates and even her own family. I even flirted with her sister, who was married with a kid, and I almost succeeded. She was interested, but her and Lisa's dad found out and stepped in, stopping it before anything could happen. Her sister was ostracized as the news spread. Within the family, I wanted Lisa to know I was everywhere, constantly reminding her how she had messed up in my eyes. This was all her fault. She had unleashed this fury of chaos upon herself. She should never have cheated on me like that. Lisa had to take an extended medical leave because of the depression and mental health issues she was suffering from the whole situation. She was becoming suicidal, even had to go on medication, and lost a lot of weight. She began to look extremely unhealthy. The whole mess was torturing her, and the more she hurt, the better I felt. By this point, I had already inflicted more damage on her than she did to me, but I had become addicted to the feeling of power. I spent zero time processing my own emotions or moving on from what happened. All I wanted was more revenge, and I couldn't stop. After weeks of ignoring Lisa's texts and calls, she finally caught me by showing up at my apartment unannounced. Late at night, she was there to pick up some stuff she'd left behind from when she lived there, to take home. She was actually a local, and her parents lived nearby. She was still on her medical leave and no longer staying on campus, but living with her parents. I told her I'd bring her stuff to her parents' house that weekend, but I couldn't let her in because I had company, which I did, but it wasn't one of her teammates or friends. Unfortunately, one then took all the items I had collected from the girls over the weeks, probably 8 or 9 things from different girls, including her teammates, and threw their belongings, along with Lisa's stuff, into big black trash bags. I took the bags to her house and then called Lisa's dad, telling him I left her stuff on his porch and to inform his demon daughter. Me and Lisa's dad actually got along well, and he even took my side after Lisa and I broke up. But after all these events, he obviously had a negative opinion of me. 15 minutes after I got off the phone with Lisa's dad, I got a call from Lisa. I answered because I wanted to hear her reaction to having all these other girls mixed in with her stuff. She was sobbing uncontrollably. It sounded like that half-crying, half-mumbling thing people do when they're hysterical. She wasn't even angry, just desperately begging me to stop my reign of terror. I just smiled and basked in the glory of hearing her. I hurt her by responding, "Why were there other guys in our relationship? You mixed them into our relationship, like I mixed other girls into your life." It was a perfect little ironic metaphor, I thought. It sounded cool at the time and was really proud of myself. Facepalm. I later found out from one of Lisa's friends, who knew she was cheating on me during our relationship, that Lisa was convinced I was the one cheating on her because I was always out of town. This doesn't make sense since I was out of town because of basketball. Very legit excuse, not just randomly on my own accord. You could literally see my schedule on the school's website. I kept in constant contact with her when I was gone, but, obviously, during practice and her team meetings, I couldn't be on my phone. She didn't have the logic in her brain to figure this out. I guess I assume it was just an excuse she made to protect her insecurities about the whole fiasco, or to keep face with people who knew she was cheating. Months went by. Lisa came back to school from her medical leave, and we bumped into each other at the physical therapy center in our athletic facility building. I saw this as yet another opportunity. It had been a while since I did something to hurt her, and I was still hungry for more vengeance. I pretended like I wanted to rekindle things with her. She was cautious at first, but eventually bit After about a week, we started to mend our relationship. We went on for about a month, but I wouldn't call this a relationship. I forbade her to have any male friends, and she wasn't allowed to go out partying with her girlfriends. I also needed full access to all her accounts and her location at all times. It was more like a hostage situation. It gave me a sense of control, while I wasn't being faithful at all. This was my plan all along. Finally, she found out I was sleeping with a girl in one of her classes, and we had a nasty breakup. I told her she literally knew what it felt like to be me when we last dated. Yet again, I felt triumphant. It was just another chance to hurt her, and I did. After this, we didn't speak for years. I graduated university and moved to Central America. She messaged me about a year after I moved, about 2 years after we last spoke. At this point, my life had become that of a real degenerate. I was doing copious amounts of substances daily, and about 75% of my life was involved in some illegal or shady activities. But I still blamed her for me becoming the dark soul I was, taking no responsibility for my bitter, immoral nature. I hadn't had another relationship since her, and always had trouble trusting women in any capacity, even after years had passed. I saw this instance of her messaging me as yet another opportunity to hurt her. We began talking as friends and even got flirty with each other over Facebook Messenger, mind you. There were literally many countries, states, and an ocean between us. At this point, I was planning a trip back to my old university to visit some friends. However, I told her it was different. Explained I was moving back to the city for a new job I'd just been offered. We decided to meet up when I got back and see if there was anything worth saving between us. I put on my best acting hat and tried to seem like I'd put our past behind us. But I was just as vengeful as I had been years ago. She was finishing up her last year at university, and I made the trip back to the USA. I met Lisa at a coffee shop when I arrived. We spent the entire night together. From her point of view, it really looked like we had moved past our differences and what happened that we could actually work things out. However, I wasn't moving back. Obviously, like I told her, I was only staying 2 nights. She didn't know this. After hooking up a few times and spending 2 days together without mentioning anything about me leaving, I packed my things and got back on a plane to Central America. I blocked her on all my social media and communication outlets. This time, I could only fantasize about what happened to her when I disappeared after she thought I had moved back and was supposedly ready to give our relationship another try. This time, however, it wasn't as satisfying as my previous plots of revenge. My substance, habit, and lifestyle only got worse every year. 3 years later, I was hospitalized and almost died because of my extended substance abuse. I was never sober for a full 24 hours after that day I went through that damn period calendar. Looking back, as much pain as I might have caused her with my vengeful life, my new identity consumed my old one. My spirit had become so dark and tainted at heart that, honestly, I think I did more harm to myself with my actions than anyone else. It led me down a road where I had no morals left. Though I spent the whole time in this story bragging about how I kept getting revenge on my ex for cheating, as satisfying as it was, I wish I had spent just as much energy healing myself from the whole ordeal. If anyone reading this is going through the pain that comes with being cheated on, a good revenge story might bring some satisfaction, but I hope you don't make the same mistake I did. Instead, spend more time healing from the hurt and moving past it. Revenge won't heal you. It's a separate journey, but can distract you from putting yourself back together. Luckily, I got sober, and I've been sober now for over 4 years. I even had another girlfriend of 2 years cheat on me before I got sober, but this time, I didn't seek revenge. I spent my time healing, I changed, and focused only on myself, and that was way more satisfying than the revenge I took on Lisa for cheating on me. Now, I'm married almost 2 years to a woman who is sober. Man, do I have a good life. I have a dream job, and a dream marriage. Thank you to everyone who read this. Sorry if it wasn't well written. I never write like this, but I've never told the full story in detail before. And I got a lot out of writing it. Mostly what I hope to share is my experience of doing horrible things but feeling an immense satisfying rush from it. Addictive and morphing from generally a good person to a relatively dark, evil one. Obviously, people have dark moments. But I feel like my personality and psyche have never been the same since that experience. I'm looking forward to any responses from people willing to read the edited mess. Hey everyone, it's been a little over 100 days since I posted this, and I've been pretty astonished at the number of people who read it. I appreciate all the comments, even though the responses were a mixed bag. It's kind of spread to Facebook, YouTube, and other places. And it's interesting how different the sentiment is across platforms. One of the most common questions I've been getting is, have you apologized or talked to Lisa since the events? In this story, the answer is no, not yet. I am planning to though. She's on a long list of amends I've been making over the years. It looks like I'll be back in her city sometime next year, and I'll reach out then. I know a lot of you are telling me not to, but I've spoken to my sponsor, therapist and mentors about this, and the decision is to apologize for my actions. I agree it needs to be done. Also, a lot of comments missed the point of the narrative and felt the need to try to be my therapist or tell me what I should have done almost a decade ago. Which wasn't the point. It's obviously horrible how I reacted, but this was about reflection, without bias. As I mentioned, I've gotten into dating again since that relationship with Lisa many years ago. Most of my girlfriends and relationships after Lisa were good, but with one of them, I was cheated on again in an even more horrific way, and it was significantly more traumatizing than the story I wrote about Lisa, but I learned from my experience with Lisa, and I didn't take revenge, I just walked away. That's when I finally got sober, and it led to the life I have now. I'm considering writing a post illustrating that story, because I actually ended up doing the healthier thing, even though I was hurt even more than with Lisa. What totally shocked me and honestly filled my heart with empathy was the sheer number of men who reached out to me here, sharing their own stories of infidelity and substance abuse, either asking for advice or just sharing their emotions. I felt connected to people dealing with the same things I did back then, and it was so fulfilling to have the opportunity to help these men cope with their trauma in healthier ways than I originally did. Thank you all for your responses. As varied as they are, I think all arguments made have some element of truth. Here's another update on my life. A few months ago, I made a post in another thread sharing a story about how I caught my girlfriend getting double-teamed by two guys and how I tried to fight one of them myself. This story is relevant here. But the one I'm about to share now is that story took place years after Lisa, my cheating college ex-girlfriend. I got into another relationship and was cheated on again, but this time I didn't seek revenge, I just walked away. My revenge story in the other thread is about what not to do after being cheated on. And this one shows how I learned from my past and tried to do the right thing, even though it was incredibly difficult. After the horrible betrayal with Lisa, in college, I went on a long, exhausting mission to get even with her. That was followed by years of bitterness and jaded feelings toward women. After college, I moved to Central America, where I basically spent years doing and selling drugs, never thinking about getting into a relationship or allowing myself to be vulnerable with another woman. I fully admit I was a terrible degenerate during this time. After a few years, I found myself more depressed than ever. The substances weren't working anymore. I grew tired of having shallow, temporary relationships with women that had no depth or meaning. I decided to drop everything in Central America and move back to the United States. I called an old friend and arranged to move in with him temporarily until I got back on my feet. When I returned to the US, I decided to quit the terrible substance habit I had developed before my breakup. With Lisa, it wasn't easy, but I was fully committed to giving happiness another chance. I also decided to try dating again. I was immune to feeling pathetic about giving up on finding someone special just because some girl in college broke my heart by cheating on me. A couple of months after moving in with my friend, I'd been on a few good dates and started opening myself up to the idea of getting close to a woman again. One day, I met a girl on a dating app. We'll call her Kate. Kate was 25, and I was 23. I absolutely fell head over heels for her. She had this burgundy red hair, not orange, but almost a fluorescent, yet natural red. She had a son, who honestly I loved, and he looked kinda just like me. Kate had just gotten out of a terribly abusive marriage and was in a very similar place as me. She had also just gone through a period of grief and a bad substance habit. She had cleaned herself up and was ready to try dating again. This worked well for both of us, because we completely understood each other's emotional state and allowed one another to take things slow without expecting too much. We both had fears of commitment and trust issues, still a little emotionally fragile due to our past relationships and substance abuse. Besides that, we had so many things in common. Kate even said she felt like she was dating the male version of herself. And she liked it, because we allowed each other to be completely authentic. As the months went on, we grew closer and closer. Kate's son and I got along well. He even called me Dad. He was too young to remember his biological father, and I was the only father figure he'd ever known. The day I taught him how to pee, standing up on a tree sealed the deal for me. He was my son from that point on. I got a job at a finance firm, and Kate worked at a nightclub. Things were going well. We moved into an apartment together, bought a car together, and were in the process of trying to buy a house. We were going to get married and have a kid of our own. We only smoked weed occasionally and felt like we'd fully recovered from our past substance addictions and emotional wreckage. We had crawled out of real darkness and found some peace and happiness together, or so I thought. Kate and I never had jealousy or suspicions with each other. We fully trusted one another. We never went through each other's phones, and we knew all our passwords and login info. So trust was never an issue until this happened. Typically, I'd get up early before work to walk Kate into the apartment from the parking lot because she wouldn't get home until after 3 or 4 a.m. most nights. The club closed at 2 a.m., but recently it had started staying open until 4 a.m. or so. One morning, Kate told me she was leaving work a little later because she had to drop a friend off at her house. She told me this only about 5 minutes before she would normally arrive home. She usually took about 35 minutes to get home from work. So I found it odd that she told me about the delay at the last second. I knew where her friend lived, so dropping her off on the way to our place should have only added about 5 extra minutes. But she ended up getting home about an hour later than usual, and something felt off. She looked high, not on weed, but it seemed like she was on coke or molly. I briefly confronted her about it, but she brushed it off quickly, saying she was late because her friend's car broke down, and they tried to fix it but couldn't. That's why it took so long. This was the first time in almost a year that anything like this had happened, so I pushed down my suspicions and chalked it up to paranoia from my past experiences with infidelity and dishonesty. I told myself Kate would never do anything sketchy. She had been through what I went through, knew my story in detail, and would never do that to me, especially since she had been cheated on too. I wasn't really suspicious she was cheating. I was more worried she might be using hard substances. Again, slowly but surely, incidents like this happened more often, starting about once a month, and eventually nearly every week. There were a few nights when I was almost certain she was high on something. When I confronted her, she admitted once that she did half a line of coke because she was tired and needed a pick-me-up to get through work, but said that was all she ever did. That at this point, she was regularly coming home at 5, 6, or even 7 a.m. some mornings. Her club usually closed at 2 or 4 a.m., depending on the day of the week. She always had excuses. The car wouldn't start, she went to a friend's house after work to smoke weed, or she went to a Waffle House with co-workers after their shifts. But then one morning, her text messages seemed really suspicious. She wouldn't respond promptly, and it felt like she was forcing herself to sound genuine. She was doing the "I'm going to be home late" dance with me again, but this time it dragged on. She said she was on her way at 6 a.m. 2 hours. After the club closed, at 6:30 a.m., I went outside to the parking lot to walk her in when she arrived. It was snowing heavily, a blizzard was hitting the area. An hour passed and I heard nothing from her. I texted and called repeatedly, but she didn't answer. Then I got a message saying she was almost home. Another hour went by before she finally pulled into the parking lot at 9:30 a.m. I had to call out of work because I couldn't leave her son home alone. I usually left for work at 7:30 a.m. I was completely covered in snow from head to toe. As I walked up to the car and opened her door, Kate looked at me like she'd seen a ghost and began rambling nervously and almost incoherently. She said she got pulled over but was let go without a ticket. The car ran out of gas, so she had to stop to fill up. Her friend was having a mental breakdown, so she stayed with her for a while to help. After work, she even started blaming me, saying she wouldn't have gotten pulled over if I had gotten the registration done sooner. And other things like that. Thinking she could have told me any of this by texting or calling at any point was frustrating. It all felt very suspicious. The whole time, she kept giving me inconsistent stories while we walked into the apartment. I couldn't help but notice how dilated her pupils were, and that she was visibly grinding her teeth. I was very angry at this point, but I was so exhausted and cold from standing outside for hours worrying about her that I temporarily let it go, and tried to distract myself with some video games. Was convinced she was doing cocaine at or after work. What else was she up to? Who was she doing coke with? Just her coworkers and friends? Was she doing other drugs? Was she cheating? I was only mildly worried about cheating. I was more concerned about her substance use. We both had struggled with substances in the past, that's why we only smoked weed now, and occasionally had a drink. We weren't sober like people in a 12-step program, but we tried to keep it mellow. Her lying about the substances concerned me even more than the substances themselves, because it was triggering my trauma from my ex, Lisa, who lied to me and cheated on me in college. At that point, I didn't even care if Kate was using substances, just wanted her to be honest with me. I couldn't stand the thought of being in another relationship where my girlfriend was lying about anything. My mind began to spiral. I felt completely betrayed. Me and Kate had helped build each other back up after our tumultuous pasts, and now we had wonderful lives. I never thought she would lie to me about anything. We had such an open, trustworthy relationship, and had never had problems like this before. I got obsessed with trying to find out if she was lying about the drugs. I needed undeniable proof. The next day, when she left for work, I tore up the house looking for something. I had no idea what I was looking for, maybe a bag of coke or some pills. I went through every drawer, every nook and cranny of every piece of furniture, coat pockets, on top of cabinets anywhere she could hide something. I found nothing. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, that my PTSD and insecurities from my past relationship were triggering me, and I was just obsessing over something that wasn't there. I decided I would stop trying to find out if she was lying, because if I was wrong, my behavior could ruin a good relationship. I thought Kate would never lie to me, or, even worse, cheat on me. She had a horrible experience with her ex-husband cheating on her while she was pregnant. He also had a substance problem. I couldn't imagine her doing the same thing to me that her ex did to her, so I let it go. She started coming home at normal times again for a while. This calmed me down a lot, and I began to feel bad for my paranoia. One night, I was at a local pool hall playing a game with a random guy we'll call Jerry, while chatting. I mentioned that my girlfriend works at a club. Jerry's sister, Sarah, was hanging out with us and said she worked at the same club a couple of months ago. I asked her if she knew Kate, and she said she did. But they weren't really close, mostly just acquaintances. I expressed that I wished Kate had a day job, so we could be home together more at night. I told Sarah that since the club typically closed at 4 a.m., I'd only see Kate for an hour or two before I left for work in the morning. Sarah looked at me confused and said, "I thought they closed at 2 a.m. When she worked there, they only closed at 4 on Fridays and Saturdays." I told her the hours had changed after she left. Sarah then said her roommates still worked there, and never mentioned the closing times had changed because she still came home just after 2 during the week. It got awkward fast, but I shrugged it off and finished the pool game. Afterward, I couldn't get what Sarah said out of my head. I looked up the club Kate worked at, and indeed, It said they were only open until 4 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights, and 2 a.m. every other night. I convinced myself. They must not have updated the website after the changes or something. But deep down, I knew Kate was up to something. I was so scared of being lied to again, after years of avoiding relationships for that exact reason. I was in full denial. The next day was Sunday night. I texted Kate and asked when she would be off that night. She said she'd be home at 4:30 and would text me when she was on her way. At 2:30 a.m., I called the club to speak with her about her son. The manager answered and told me they had closed at 2, and Kate had already left. I felt like I was going to throw up. I decided to confront Kate. I don't know when she came home that night, because I ended up drinking until I passed out and didn't go out to the parking lot to walk her in. When I woke up, she was asleep next to me. I got up and went into the living room, where I saw her purse sitting on the coffee table. I picked it up and started going through it. At first, I didn't find anything, no substances or anything else. That would throw me off. Then I noticed, tucked away in one of the small zippers, an empty dime bag rolled up inside the zipper, was a dollar bill. Was this what I'd been looking for all along? I just put it down on the coffee table and went to work, hoping she'd see it, and no, I had found it. When I came home, she was getting ready for work, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, doing her makeup, specifically her eyeliner. I leaned against the door and looked at her through the mirror. She looked up and said, "Hey babe, what's up? How was work?" I guess she didn't notice the rolled up dollar bill I had found. I replied, "Hey, we need to talk," I told her. I'd called the club, and they said they close at 2 a.m. on Sundays. She immediately ignored the whole topic about lying over the club's closing time and instead screamed at me for being controlling, obsessive, not trusting her, and having no right to call the club in the first place. It didn't faze me. Had made sure I wasn't just being paranoid. What she was doing was greater gaslighting, which I was all too familiar with from my previous relationship. The fight escalated. I accused her of doing cocaine behind my back and lying about her substance use. I called her a That's when she turned around and swung at me with her eyeliner pencil. I turned reflexively, and she lodged the pencil about 1.5 inches into my shoulder. Then she punched me about 6 times in the face. I didn't react or hit her back. I was mostly just in shock. When she finished beating me and screaming, we just stood there staring at each other. I pulled the pencil out of my arm and dropped it on the floor. I walked out of the bathroom and into the kitchen, where I grabbed some duct tape and patched up the hole in my arm. I have a tattoo right where she stabbed me, and I still have a nice, healthy scar there to this day. I left the apartment and started walking to the liquor store. Kate was blowing up my phone, apologizing, and when she didn't get a response, she started throwing insults. Then repeating the cycle over and over. I bought a bottle of Fireball whiskey and walked, drank, walked, drank. I eventually blacked out and woke up to none other than Jeffrey, the guy I played pool with the other day, and some other stranger trying to pick me up out of the snow. They put me in their car. Apparently, they were on their way to work and saw me fall and not move on the side of the street, so they pulled over to make sure I was okay today. I wonder where those guys worked, because it must have been super early in the morning. I had been walking for hours at that point and probably blacked out long before I fell. I'd finished the whole bottle of whiskey quickly, in the car with them. They asked what was going on, and why I was walking around that late, that far from town. I could barely talk. It felt like my lips were frozen. I was able to tell them where I lived, and they dropped me off at home. When I went inside, Kate was shocked and tried to get me to lie down and warm up. I blacked out again shortly after, and woke up in a pool of vomit in my bed. I got up, took a shower, and went into the living room, where Kate was sitting on the couch, crying. We talked. She apologized for stabbing me with the eyeliner pencil, and admitted she had started doing coke again. She said she was going to her co-worker's place. A few of them lived together in an apartment, all females, and she'd do coke with them before coming home. She first started using to help get through work, but it escalated. I asked if it was just coke or other drugs, because some nights she seemed more than just high on coke. She admitted that occasionally she took a Xanax to take the edge off the coke before coming home, but she said she did this rarely. We ended the conversation civilly. She promised to stop doing substances and lying to me about where she was, and that she'd never hide anything from me again. But now that I knew she was capable of lying and keeping things from me, I was a bit more on my toes than usual. Weeks went by, and things were kind of back to normal for a while. The only odd thing was, Kate was working more often than usual. She covered 4 people, picked up extra shifts randomly more often. Before, she only worked 4 days a week, but now she was working 6 or 7 days. It didn't become suspicious until I noticed that if we had a fight on a night she wasn't scheduled to work, she would immediately start getting ready and tell me. She'd text her manager asking if she could come in because she needed to get away from me. We only had 1 car, and this was before Uber was everywhere, so I couldn't check if she was really at work. Then one day, a friend was over while Kate was at work, and we were playing video games. We decided to go out for some Taco Bell. Since we hadn't had it in forever, we had the munchies and wanted to find one. I pulled out my phone to check Google Maps for the nearest Taco Bell and noticed something I'd never seen before. Kate and I shared a Google account on our Androids, so it showed both our search histories for locations we typed into Google Maps. On that very day, she had searched for some random location in a nearby neighborhood just when she left for work. My head began to spiral again, and I told my friend I didn't feel up to going out anymore. I just wanted to go to bed. He left a bit confused. I double-checked everything on my phone and even used my computer to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting it, and I wasn't. When Kate came home, I asked if she really went to work that night. She got defensive and started accusing me of being paranoid. I then showed her the Google Maps search for that location right when she supposedly left for work, and it wasn't me. She proceeded to tell me the most epic lie I've ever heard. She said she never searched that. Google was wrong, and it was probably just a glitch. At that point, I finally admitted to myself I was dating a liar again. I grabbed a few things, got a motel room in town, and spent many nights fighting with Kate over the phone and crying while watching terrible cable TV. I was so angry that for the second time in a row, I was with someone who lied and kept things from me. One of our fights got so heated we stopped talking for 2 days. We didn't break up, just stopped talking. Something inside me desperately hoped she was only doing coke and drugs, not cheating. But I was super suspicious she was cheating, and I couldn't let it go. After a couple of nights in the motel, I convinced myself Kate wasn't cheating, she was just back into her substance addiction, and I needed to help her get out of it. I knew firsthand what addiction could do, as it had done to me. I decided to reconcile with her. It was late at night, and I knew she'd be home in a few hours. I planned to meet her in the parking lot with some flowers or something. I borrowed a friend's car, went to the shop to buy flowers, and headed home. I parked and waited for Kate to get home. At around 2:45 a.m., I saw our car pull into the parking lot, but Kate wasn't driving. She was sitting in the passenger seat with a man I didn't know driving my car. I just stayed low and watched. Then, another man got out from the back seat. What was happening? Who were these people? All 3 walked into our apartment. I pulled out my phone and began typing a text to Kate. I tried to act like I didn't know anything to see what she'd say. Maybe these were just platonic friends and she had nothing to hide. I texted her, asking if she was home from work yet and if I could come over to talk things out. I told her I wanted to apologize for yelling and saying hurtful things during our fights. No reply for about 15 minutes. Then I got a text saying, "I just got home, but I want some alone time. I do love you with all my heart. Let's talk tomorrow." My heart was pounding as I read the text. I banged my head on the steering wheel in rage while crying. I got out of the car and decided to go inside to confront her. When I got to the apartment, the door was locked. I'd forgotten my keys. I only had the ones for my friend's car. I heard loud music playing on the other side of the door. I tried knocking, but no one answered when I knocked, so I walked around to where I knew the living room and bedroom windows were. We were on the ground floor. I peeked in through the living room window and saw no one. Honestly, I was hoping to see them just casually smoking weed or something, but if they weren't in the living room, then where the hell were they? I walked a little further down, until I reached our bedroom window. The blinds were down, but if I positioned my eyes at the edge of the window and leaned in close, I could see around the blinds. My heart sank into my stomach. On the other side of the blinds, in our bed, my beautiful girlfriend whose son I considered my own was being spit-roasted by the two guys I'd seen her walk in with. I leaned against the wall and slid down until I was sitting on the ground, my face in my hands. I sat there for 5 minutes, vaguely hearing what was going on through the window above me. I contemplated going in and killing all 3 of them. I was so filled with rage. Eventually, I decided to get up and get back into the car. I started chain-smoking cigarettes, as all my memories of the relationship I cherished began to dismantle in my mind. Everything was a lie. Everything I thought about Kaitha, things that made me love her so much, started to dissolve. Now, many of you have read my story about when my college ex-girlfriend Lisa cheated on me. When Lisa cheated, my rage led me to seek the nastiest revenge I could be in that story. I went completely overboard, and Lisa ended up extremely broken and abused. Now, many years later, in my first relationship after Lisa, I was in the same position, but worse. This time, however, I decided not to get revenge on Kate, like I did on Lisa. No, this time, I was going to kill myself. But first, I was going to kill Kate. I started the car and drove to a gas station. I knew it was open 24 hours and sold basic hunting and fishing equipment. They didn't have any guns, but they had hunting and skinning knives. I bought the largest knife they had and drove back to my motel. Grabbed my apartment keys and then headed home to paint my bedroom walls with their blood. When I got there, I slowly and quietly opened the front door. I crept down the hallway toward our bedroom, gripping the knife tightly. Expecting one of the guys to jump out, I inched up to the bedroom door. It was open, but the lights were off, and I couldn't see anything inside. It was quiet. I didn't hear anything. Sweat dripped down my face as I tried to control my shaking and breathing so no one would hear me come in. Afraid of what I might see, I reached into the bedroom and flipped on the light switch. When the lights popped on, I saw Kate, lying naked in bed by herself. Was I hallucinating earlier? Or had those guys just left before I got back? She didn't wake up, so I looked around the room. I saw a condom wrapper on the nightstand next to her bed, which pretty much confirmed what I'd seen earlier. I now knew I wasn't hallucinating. Me and Kate never used condoms. As I took my first step into the bedroom, I heard the door to her son's room across the hall open. I turned around quickly, ready to stab one of the two guys I'd seen earlier. But of course, it was just Kate's son. My son. My first thought was, what is Kate's son doing here? Why didn't she take him to daycare or her mum's house before having 2 random dudes come over to sleep with her? Was the little kid there the entire time while she was at work or getting double-teamed across the hall? What the hell is wrong with her? He looked up at me from his bedroom door, then down at my back, and rushed in to hug my leg. I put my hand on his head, glanced at the knife in my other hand, then slipped the knife into my back pocket. I got down on one knee and told my stepson, I'm going away for a while. I just wanted to say goodbye to you and Mum before I left. He gave me the saddest face I've ever seen. I picked him up, took him back to bed, tucked him in, and said goodbye. I knew it would be the last time I saw him, but I didn't want him to know he was about to never see me again. After that, I realized I couldn't kill his mother. He can't grow up without his mother. He doesn't deserve that, even if I thought she deserved to die. However, I still wanted to die. I walked out. I left the apartment and started walking down the street, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat down on a bus stop bench, pulled out the knife, and began cutting my wrists. I was ready to die. For about 10 minutes, I cut, trying to make the blood flow faster. Then, a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out, and one said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" I calmly told him, "I'm done." He radioed for backup, and before I knew it, there were about 15 or 20 cops surrounding me. They spent about 20 minutes trying to get me to drop the knife. I was bleeding everywhere. One cop stepped closer and asked me to hand over the knife. I stared at the blade for a few seconds, but I wasn't coming down from the edge. Nothing could stop me at that point. I also knew I couldn't get out of this without being thrown into a psych ward. I raised the knife over my head and lunged at the officer. Before I could even take 2 steps, I was on the ground, being tasered, with officers piling on top of me and putting handcuffs on me. I had made one major miscalculation. I thought if I made a move toward the officer, they'd shoot me dead. But I forgot I was white. So instead, I was just tasered. Next thing I knew, I was riding in the back of the cruiser. They took me to the hospital, sedated me, and patched me up. The sedatives knocked me out completely. When I woke up, I was in what I later learned was a psych ward for the criminally insane. It was like jail or prison, but worse, you didn't know the day or time. And there was no communication with the outside world, at least not where I was. I'm not going to go into detail about what I experienced there. It was one of the darkest places I'd ever seen. I stayed there for about 6 weeks until an attorney got me released on a technicality. When I was finally released, I took a taxi home, a 3-hour ride. The driver dropped me off at a McDonald's near my apartment because I didn't want to go back to that place after everything I'd seen. I sat down and charged my phone. I had texts, calls, and voicemails from many people, including Kate. Had also been fired from work, and my credit cards were maxed out. Kate had clearly been using them, as she had a card linked to all my accounts. I called Kate, and she was ecstatic to hear from me. She said she'd been worried and had no idea what happened. I told her I'd explain everything but needed her to meet me at McDonald's, and not to bring her son. She was confused but agreed to meet after dropping her son off at daycare. Later, Kate walked into McDonald's and rushed to hug and kiss me. I brushed her off and told her to sit down. This threw her off a bit, but she complied. I told her everything: the stabbing, what I'd seen before, being taken to the ward. What she said shocked me. Kate had the audacity to deny everything. She claimed I must have looked into the wrong apartment and seen someone else. I shook my head in disbelief and cut her off mid-sentence. I told her she needed to tell me the truth right now. If she lied again, I'd get up, walk out, and she and her son would never see me again. I looked her sternly in the eyes. She could see I meant every word. I asked one more time, "Have you been cheating on me?" She looked down at her lap, began to cry, and muttered, "Yes, I have." She admitted her substance problem had escalated from coke to method. She was doubling down on Xanax every night. That's why the guy was driving our car. She was too intoxicated to drive. I stared at her for about a minute, then let out a big sigh. I pulled my phone out of the charger and stood up. She looked up and asked, "Where are you going?" I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "I'm going to go do drugs. It's all I can think to do right now." As I picked up my backpack, she asked, "Are we still together?" I told her, "No. I didn't mean I was going to stay. If you told me the truth, I was going to leave either way. Just wanted to hear you admit it before I left." For the next few months, I pretty much lived on the road, basically homeless. I hopped from town to town, mostly selling substances at strip clubs and crashing wherever I could. Sometimes I slept in motels, sometimes outside. I was using a lot of my own product. I lost almost 65 pounds during those months because I would sometimes go days without eating or sleeping. One day, I woke up in a hospital. I had been having seizures, and my internal organs had started failing. I was severely malnourished. I'm 6 feet 5 inches tall, and was weighing in at only 155 pounds. Soaking wet after a big meal. Multiple doctors and therapists came to see me every day, trying to figure out what was going on. I spent about a month in the hospital recovering before I was discharged. The doctors recommended I seek a sobriety program. They concluded I had no mental disorders other than PTSD, and mostly a polysubstance addiction problem. When I was discharged, I stayed at a halfway house shelter for almost 4 months. I found a sober program and began going to meetings. Since being released from the hospital, I've never touched substances again. I got a new phone and number. Almost no one from my life before the hospital had any contact with me anymore. While at the halfway house, I started working out to regain some size. I looked like a beanpole. When I left the halfway house, I got a job at a nearby gym as a personal trainer, brand new career path for me. The gym became my new safe space where I felt okay. Fast forward 5 years to today, I'm still sober. I weigh a healthy and lean 265 pounds. I've been happily married for 2 years, and I run my own lucrative business. The day I left the hospital, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do with my life. My instinct was to retreat into darkness. I still wanted to get back at Kate for what she did, just like I did with Lisa in college. But after some deep reflection over a few weeks, I decided the best revenge would be to live the best life I could. Most importantly, I decided to stop feeling sorry for myself for what I'd been through. This changed everything for me. I stopped blaming others or the world for what happened. Looking back today, 5 years later, at where my life has led me, I'm so glad I made that choice. I don't even recognize myself anymore. When I wrote those stories about Lisa and Kate, I don't see me, I saw some other messed up kid. I turned 30 this weekend. I got sober a month before my birthday 5 years ago. If you'd told me back then where I'd be now, I wouldn't have believed you. I'm so happy I didn't take my own life, or even worse, take Kate's life that day. I'm so glad I chose to get up and keep trying. I had to fall a few times, but when I finally stood up, I flew. I spoke with Kate only once, years after I left that McDonald's, the day she admitted to cheating on me. After that conversation, I have 2 sits. True, what they say. The best revenge is living a good life. This was a long video. If you enjoyed it and want more videos like this in the future, please leave a comment.